We're doing a study on the book of Job. We're calling it Triumphing Over Trouble. And this is lesson number 4. Lesson number 4, which we're calling it the Battle of Bitterness. Job has just gone through a very, very devastating time in his life. Not only has he lost everything, but now he is physically ill and has sores all over his body. It's a terrible time. And so we find Satan's not only attacked what we would say his fortune, his family, but now his flesh. He's suffered in every way that a man can suffer. But the Bible says he did not curse God. Thank God he has won the battle. He doesn't know that, but he has already overcome and defeated the devil. However, in chapter 3, there's a major difference that takes place. It's his attitude. His attitude. He goes from worshiping to complaining. Now, I hope this has never happened to you, but I know it has or will. Sometime in your life, you begin to feel sorry for yourself and you begin to wonder, why did this happen to me? And what brings this out of Job is his friends. His friends. Now, his friends have not said a word yet, but they're doing a lot of thinking. And he's picking up on their spirit, their condemnation. And we know that they're thinking that because the moment they begin speaking, that's exactly what they begin saying. They begin condemning him for all of this. And so let me give you the scripture text here. This is in Job, the 3rd chapter, verses 1 through 3. After this, after all this that's happened to him, Job opened his mouth and cursed the day of his birth. Wow, what a change. The man that was praising God is now cursing the day he was born. And Job spoke and said, "May the day perish in which I was born, and the night in which it was said, a male child is conceived." Oh, what a tragedy. This man of faith, this man that has passed the test, is now caught in his own trap, the mouth trap. And he begins to feel sorry for himself. It's what we call self-pity. What did I do? In fact, that's the question that he wants answered here is, what did I do to deserve this? Wait a minute. Who do we think we are? That we should only experience good things. Remember what he told his wife when he said to her, shall we not experience good things from God and then adverse things? And all of this he didn't sin. But boy, he's coming close to it now. There's been a big change in his life. Why is this happening? The main reason, it's time. It's time. Over time, disappointments tend to accumulate. In other words, we keep holding on to them. And over time, they tend to undermine our faith. That's exactly what's happening in Job's life. The moment that it happened, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks, there was no sin in Job's heart. But over time, it's like the water washing away the foundation, eroding the foundation. That's what's happening. And so he begins to feel sorry for himself. We do the same thing. We begin to wonder if God really cares about us. Am I really important to God? Does God know my name? Has God forgotten me? This is where it all comes back. And of course, again, it's a battle for our faith. A battle for our faith. And the thing that is making it come to the surface in Job's life, of course, is his friends. I will call them his fickle friends. Now, I don't think these people are any better or any worse than somebody else. But friends can tend not only to bring the best out of you, but also the worst out of you. When you're with friends, you end up sometimes letting down your guard and you begin to talk ways that you shouldn't be talking. That's what's happening here. Job's friends come. They're there with him for 7 days and never say one word. Now, that's a mistake. That is a mistake. It's good they came. It's good they came to comfort him, but they're not comforting him. They end up condemning him. They sit, and it says they never said a word. I've had a lot of people question me as a pastor, and they would say, well, what do you say? I don't know what to say. Say something nice. Say something good. See, you don't have the answers. Don't pretend that you do. You don't know what's going on. Don't pretend that you know what's going on. Just simply tell them that you love them, that you care about them. See, I've seen that so many times. People come when someone dies, and they're really intending well, and they'll start talking about things they don't even know they're talking about. And they're trying to why this person died, and God took them, and they just go on and on. It would be better to say none of that. Just simply say, I love you. I really feel deeply for you. I care about you. That would have a lot more meaning, because the people you're talking to know that you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know why that person died. You don't know. I mean, other people have been worse than that, and God healed them. Why did God heal this one and not heal that one? We don't know the answers to that. Only God knows. So don't pretend that you do. Simply be honest and say, I love you. I care about you. And that's where Job's friends went wrong. They could have helped him, but instead of helping him, they end up condemning him. Condemning him with their silence. Be careful that your silence doesn't condemn the people that you really care about, you really love them. See, as you read through the rest of the book of Job, there's someone that it opens up with him, but you never find him again. That's Satan. Satan's name is never mentioned again. He's not talking, he's not speaking. We don't see anything going on in the heavens at the throne of God. He's silent through the rest of the book of Job. But listen, he's still there. He's still there. In the silence, behind the scenes. He's still working. But he's working through people. God help us to learn from this. That we don't become an agent for the devil. That the devil doesn't use us to speak for him. And regretfully, that's what Job's friends did. And it's why they ended up having to repent for what they have done, what they have said, their accusations, false accusations against Job. See, what you ought to compare it to is learn to be a candle, not an icicle. Someone was telling me the other day that in times, if you're ever caught in a condition where it's very cold, if you can get in a small room and just light one candle, it not only provides light, it's amazing how much light that one candle can provide in the darkness, but it will raise the temperature by 10 degrees in a small room. One candle. That's amazing. Amazing. Be a candle, not an icicle. It's sad, but his friends were icicles. They sat there silently, not saying a word, but they're thinking, I wonder what Job did wrong. They're thinking condemning thoughts. They're thinking things that should not have been thinking. So God help us to learn from this. Be a candle. It's better to light one candle than to curse the darkness. Don't be an icicle. Job's friends have picked up the devil's accusation. They begin to say exactly what the devil was saying about Job. Job is not a good man. Job has got sin in his life. Job doesn't really love you. And so they're now doing the devil's work. Oh, God help us. I repent. These words convict me, because how many times I've fallen into that trap of talking about things I didn't know what I was talking about. I shouldn't have said anything, and end up condemning others, end up hurting people. That's not good. Jesus didn't do that, friend. Jesus was not that way. And so what we find in this story is what the devil could not accomplish, his friends almost did. The devil had said, Job will curse you, God. He will curse you to your face. The devil was wrong. He was a liar. He was giving a false accusation. Job didn't curse God, but he did curse the day he was born, and say it would have been better if I'd never been born. Oh, that's getting dangerously close to cursing God, because God is the one that gave us our life. So he doesn't curse God, but he almost crossed the line. And it wasn't the devil directly, it was the devil indirectly through his friends that caused him to do this. See, this is what we call trauma. Trauma. Experiencing trauma throws us into what's called shock. Shock is where we go into an automated response. We're not thinking this thing through. It's not a rational process of thinking. We're simply responding to what happened to us. But over time, shock begins to wear away. And as shock wears away, we have to learn how to cope with our situation. That's what's happening in Job's life. It's why I caution people that have experienced some kind of terrible pain, emotional pain within their life. Don't up and make a lot of decisions right now. Take time to work through this. The way the psalmist put it, Psalm 23, is, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Don't try to run through it. You can't run through it. Walk through it. Don't stop. Don't camp there. Don't stay there. Keep making progress, but you can't rush through it. So over time, as the shock wears away, you've got to learn how to cope with the situation. You have to learn how to deal with your badly wounded emotions. See, we have emotional energy like we have physical energy. And if we're not careful, during these times when our emotional energy is very low, we'll end up like Job, feeling sorry for ourselves, self-pity. We begin blaming others for what we have experienced. This is what psychologists call a cycle of grief. And here's what they say happens to us. When you experience some kind of traumatic situation, such as Job losing everything, and then his health being attacked, this cycle of grief, the first thing that happens is denial. It's like, this is a bad dream. I'm going to wake up and, this is not really real. But then you realize it is real. And you have to deal with the facts. At that point, you usually go into fear. Fear is what's going to happen next. And that leads you into depression. Depression, where now that you feel like the weight of the whole world is upon your shoulders. You can't hold your head up. You can't look anybody in the eye. Depression leads you to guilt. And you know you're not perfect. You know that there's things that you could have done better. And the devil is blaming you, and many times people. And so you begin to blame yourself. Guilt, and then anger. You get angry. Like one woman told me after her husband died, I got so angry at him for dying. Why did you have to die? Now, that's not a rational expression. That is an emotional expression. But what you have to do is work through those feelings. Work through those emotions. As I said, don't try to run through it. You can't. You've got to walk through it and deal with each of those individually till you come to the place of what we call coping. Coping. Okay? This is real. It did happen. It was terrible, but I'm still here. What am I going to do with the rest of my life? It takes time to be healed of emotional injuries. And that's where Job is caught right now, in the time factor. In fact, the truth is, emotional healing usually takes longer than physical healing. Physical healing, if it's something that's external, it usually is just a matter of weeks. If it's something internal, a broken bone, surgery, it's a matter of months, at the most a year or two, before you're restored physically. But some people emotionally are still carrying the emotional hurts of many years of pain. Something that happened years ago, and yet it's still very real in their life. They're still suffering for it. And that's where Job is. Job just simply wanting to find a way to stop the pain, to stop the hurting. How can I get out of this pain? Regretfully, his friends didn't help him. In fact, they began to blame him. Now, what is it about human nature that makes us so quick to point our fingers at other people? Why is it that we, in fact, that's what they say, it's reverse psychology. The bad news is good news because it happened to them and not me. That's the reason they say that bad news sells so much, is because bad news is good news. It wasn't me that it happened to. They call that reverse psychology. But we're always pointing our fingers at other people. It's been well said, be careful when you do that, because when you're pointing your finger at others, you're pointing three right back at you. So be careful with that. This is where his friends made their mistake. Where did they go wrong? I'm going to just point out 4 things here, and there's more. But here's 4 things. They tried to give him intellectual answers to emotional problems. His problem was not an intellectual problem. He doesn't need a lesson in theology. He just needs somebody to care. Someone that loves him. Someone that will help him. And so be careful when you do that, because many times, as I mentioned earlier, that I had a tendency, and particularly when I was younger, and I still have this tendency of over-spiritualizing things. And I try to give spiritual answers to emotional problems. That's a mistake. So they're trying to give intellectual answers to emotional problems. Here's another one of the mistakes that they make. They pretend to speak for God without getting answers from God. Boy, God will hold you accountable for that. Anytime that you're pretending you're talking for God, you better be talking for God. You better be saying what God is saying. Because if not, God's going to hold you accountable for pretending to represent Him when you're misrepresenting Him. So they're pretending that they're bringing Job a word from God. It wasn't true. It wasn't true. It wasn't a word from God at all. It was an accusation that actually came from the devil. They're speaking for the devil instead of speaking for God. There's another mistake that they're making. They are acting as though they are immune to trouble. In other words, this is Job's problem, not my problem. Sooner or later, you will be facing something very similar. Sooner or later, because we're all a part of the human race. This is not heaven. And there will be bad things that will happen in your life, just like bad things happened in Job's life. So when we pretend like we're better than that, that's a big mistake. We're actually playing the hypocrite when we do that, and God will hold us accountable for it. And then there's a fourth thing that I see, a mistake in their life. They failed to give him any practical help. Boy, I've fallen into this one so many times because I'm a preacher, a teacher. I always want to, fix everything by talking about it, by teaching. Well, I've got a lesson on that. I've got 3 points on this. And I remember years ago I was reading this book. It helped me a lot. It was on marriage, addressed to men. And one of the chapters in the book hit me like a ton of bricks. It said, husbands, your wife needs your shoulder, not your mouth. Man, I'm a preacher. So I got a sermon for everything. And every time my wife would say something to me about, honey, and she's talking about a problem, she's discussing something that's troubling her, I've got a sermon for that. And so I'm giving her a 4-point outline, Oh, and she would stand there look at me like, you don't have a clue. And I didn't, because I was trying to give her an intellectual answer to an emotional problem. I was pretending I had the answers when really all she needed was a good hug. Just go over and put my arm around her and say, honey, I don't know all the answers. I'm not sure, but one thing I know, God's going to help us. We're going to get through this. We'll be okay. They didn't give him any practical help at all. They come pretending to help him, but ended up condemning him. And so they failed. They failed miserably because of bad theology. They had this mistaken belief that good things happen to good people, bad things happen to bad people. So immediately, because he's had bad things happen, they think he's a bad person. There's got to be hidden sin in his life. And so because of bad theology, they think he's guilty of hiding hidden sin. Hidden sin. And God held them guilty for their false accusations. God had said he did nothing wrong. He did not sin. And they're saying he did sin. So God holds them guilty for it. Now, when all of this starts happening in Job's life, Job, because of his pain, what he has experienced, is extremely sensitive to their false accusations. That's one of the things that pain does. Pain amplifies your sensitivity. Well, I can remember that week I spent in the hospital with the kidney stone attack, and they ended up finally having to do surgery. Man, I learned more about hospital visitation. And I learned one of the things. You don't walk into a hospital room, somebody's hurting, and you touch them. You don't do that. They're already in pain. Just stand by their side and tell them that you care. But every time you touch them, don't bump the bed. It just creates more pain. And so Job is extremely sensitive, and he can feel what they are thinking before they start speaking. And he was right. They were condemning him with their bad theology. So what does Job do? Job begins to protest, try to justify himself, declaring, I'm innocent. I didn't do anything wrong. I'm innocent. Now, why is he doing this? Because of the condemnation of his friends. In fact, 4 times in this 3rd chapter, verses 11 and 12, 4 times Job says, why did this happen? I'm innocent. I didn't do anything wrong. Now listen carefully, because this is not only the story of Job. Jesus did the same thing. On the cross, one of the cries from the cross is, my God, why have you forsaken me? It is not a sin to ask why. But you're not going to get the answers there. That's not going to be the answer. Because your answer is not going to be an intellectual answer. It's going to be something that happens through the pain that is within your life. Asking why doesn't solve the problem. Even Jesus asked why. Jesus did not sin. But there are some things in this life that don't make sense. That's why we're called to live by faith. There are some things you can't rationalize. You can't explain it away. Stop trying to do that. As Christians, we're called to live by faith. We're called, in fact, that's what he calls us, believers. What do we believe? We believe God. We believe God is true. We believe God is love. We believe God cares. And so the answer is not going to be found in asking why. The answer is going to be found in faith, in believing God. And faith works by love. Now, it's something very interesting that Job does here. Job begins complaining about this hedge. He said, I feel like you've trapped me inside this hedge. It's very interesting because the devil had talked about that same hedge. Only the devil talked about it from the outside. The devil is saying, you put up a hedge to keep me out. Job's saying, you put up a hedge and I feel hedged in. See, this is the way that we look at life. Job is talking about his fears that he had. And this is what you'll find there in where he says, I feared a fear and it's happened to me. It is possible that the devil used that as the opportunity to attack his life. But that was not a sin because God has said there's nothing wrong in his life. You have to remember, though, Job doesn't have a Bible. He doesn't have a preacher. He doesn't have anyone to teach him what I'm sharing with you today. He had no way. He did not have the book of Job. It was written after Job died. So you and I have an advantage over Job. Job is saying, what did I do to deserve all this? Why has this happened to me? And the truth is, there's no way that he can know the answer to that. Now, since God is not there to answer his question, his friends are going to try to do it for him. And that's the way that I've seen that so many times we speak when God is not speaking. When God is silent, we need to be silent. One of the things that I've learned about the Bible is speak where the Bible speaks. Be silent where the Bible is silent. That'll keep you out of a lot of problems if you'll learn that simple lesson. And so the question that he has is, where is God when I'm hurting? Where is God in the midst of all of this? It seems like God is hiding. The truth is, God is in me, the one that is hurting. That's where he is. He's with me. He's not in the thing that is hurting me. Don't get that confused. Where is God when I'm hurting? God's in me. See, if you can keep this straight in your life, you will understand that many things in life are not fair. But don't confuse life with God. We're talking about two different things here. Life and God. I remember the story that was told many years ago in one of Hitler's death camps when he put the Jews before the firing squad, and as they are shooting and killing these people and forcing the rest of the prisoners to watch, and someone starts under his breath saying, "Where is God? Where is God?" And someone responded and said, "He's right there at the firing squad." And that is the truth. He's right there in the midst of your trouble. He's right there with you in your pain. He hasn't forgotten you. All the eyes of heaven are on Job right now when he feels so alone. You must understand, God is not the one that's doing you wrong, not attacking you. It's the devil. And he's trying to destroy your faith, your relationship with God. Don't allow him to do it. Let your faith arise and you will discover you too can triumph over your troubles.